before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Wrestling Hub Official and follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. When it comes to the investigation into sexual misconduct allegations against Vince McMahon, the Observer claimed that HBO are working on a project regarding this development. HBO Real Sports is working on a Vince McMahon story based on all of the different things that have come out, and they're pretty heavy hitters. We'll have to wait and see what it is, and there's other people working on it too. Salon Magazine did a piece, Variety did a piece. There wasn't anything new in those pieces though. I mean, really, the guys at the Wall Street Journal did a tremendous job, because they really have broken stuff, and they actually, they did a great job as far as sources within the board of directors to get that information that everyone else has, including me, has written about, but it's based on the sourcing that they got. With WWE set for another pay-per-view, the company is apparently not all that excited about the card for SummerSlam, as WrestleVotes reported. In the most WWE of ways, I had a source tell me this morning they really don't like the SummerSlam card, they being the people who put it together. What? The card for the event is as follows: Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar in a last man standing match for the undisputed WWE Universal title, the Usos versus the Street Profits for the undisputed WWE Tag title, Liv Morgan versus Ronda Rousey for the SmackDown Women's title, Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's belt, Bobby Lashley versus Theory for the US title, Pat McAfee versus Happy Corbin, Seth Rollins versus Riddle, and Logan Paul versus Miz. Following Dark Side of the Ring special on the plane ride from hell, Ric Flair had been removed from WWE's opening video package. Since then, he's been put back in, as he revealed on Busted Open Radio. I went and saw Vince yesterday, Monday, to personally thank him because they were in Tampa. It made me feel like my world had changed again. It made me feel a lot better than when they took me off. Everything Vince McMahon has ever said to me has come true, and he said, "I promise I'll put you back on it." And he did. I went over there and thanked him. When asked about his former faction with Roman Reigns and Jon Moxley, Seth Rollins mentioned during that same interview, "I can say that, and maybe this might come back to bite me at some point, but I just don't think you're ever going to see the three of us team up ever again. It wouldn't look the way you want it to look. It wouldn't be like the old days in the Shield. It would be a different animal. I think we're all just two big stars with two big personalities at this point. We needed each other back then, and now none of us need the other one. We're at a point where we're all standalone stars on a different level. So to have to kind of minimize that to fit into each other's molds, I just don't see it ever happening again. I think it would look a whole lot different than the next time you see us together. The next time you see us together, it's going to be when we're inducted into the Hall of Fame. That's going to be it." After the passing of Brodie Lee, AEW allowed his son to be on the program, which has apparently led to some thinking the company is exploiting Lee's family. Brodie's wife, Amanda Huber, spoke to Men's Health about this idea. First, she spoke about what Brodie would think seeing his son wrestle so early. He would tell you he absolutely hates it, but I could tell you that deep down in his heart, he would be just bubbling over the moon. Huber then noted this in regards to the accusations of exploitation. That's not it either. Such grace and such kindness that I personally don't feel like they've exploited him or taken advantage of us. Everything's always felt to me like it's done with nothing but love. I think people are skeptical and pessimistic and assume that it's a lot more sinister than it is. Again, everybody would have a different way of handling this. I'm doing my best. I'm trying. There's a good chance I'm screwing something up along the way. Brodie Lee Jr. would add, "I bet if he was here, he would probably change his mind. He just wanted me to be happy. If he were here, have him see me be in the happiest place, me being in the happiest mood, I feel like that would brighten up his day. Being involved helps me because, I'm carrying the legacy of my dad. I do it because I love it, and my dad did it." With Edge expected to return for Raw next week, Wrestling Observer Live's Brian Alvarez revealed what's next for him. I think they've already got Rated R Superstar merch, so I'm pretty sure that he's returning as the Rated R Superstar. Now what that means as a babyface or as a heel, I don't know. I don't think he's coming back to Judgment Day, especially because he left Judgment Day. He left because he didn't want to be involved with anybody spooky, but then they haven't done anything spooky with Judgment Day. Bella mentioned the trauma that came from this breakup. I think a lot of women get into this situation when it's like, I love this person, but I don't know if it's right for my life, and that's a hard thing. Sometimes we meet amazing people, but we're just meant to live a different life. I just got this feeling so deep in my gut of like, I need to walk away, and no one thought I would, but it was hitting me so hard. Even though it's painful and even traumatizing, I just knew it was right. During an appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live, The Rock reacted to his daughter recently making her in-ring debut for WWE as Ava Raine, saying, "Yes, very proud of her. Simone Johnson, my oldest daughter, the daughter I have with Danny Garcia, she made her debut in WWE, their smaller federation, NXT. So she did so good. She went out there on the microphone. You've got to be poised when you go out there. She has a cool wrestling name, it's Ava Raine. It comes from all different areas. Usually, it's probably a mix. What she wanted to do, what she wanted to be called. Ultimately, what the powers that be wanted to be called to as well. She's the first, fourth generation of pro wrestlers in WWE. I always like to say that name Ava Raine could mean a lot of things, but to me in my mind, it means she's going to lay the smackdown on some candy asses." For an interview with Comic Book, Cody Rhodes touched on his torn pec and how he was told to save the reveal for Hell in a Cell. No one saw it, other than I think Vince McMahon saw it. "I was going to take my robe off for cameras, and the voice of God, whoever is head of production in that moment, I remember the saying, 'Don't.' Stu, the camera operator, told me we were going to save it for the show. Very few people had actually seen it and how bad it was. Through the day, it was getting worse because there was so much blood under my skin. I'm almost anemic, so if you chop me or squeeze me, you can see it instantly. Just the perfect person to have their body ripped in half for that moment." Rhodes also noted that he is not certain he will be able to make a quick turnaround. "I want to say good, but it's misleading. It's not like ACLs or PCLs or anything where your life changes completely for a while. After 2 weeks, you feel like you're normal, but you're not. It's just tied to your bone on your arm, and you have to let it actually form." For the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer discussed Olympic gold medalist and WWE signee Gable Steveson potentially wanting to go after a third NCAA title or make another run for the Olympics. There is still nothing new on Gable Steveson. Last year they made a big deal of him being drafted to Raw, and at the time they were going to put him on Raw a few times during the year to keep his name out there with the idea of a debut around Mania time. They never had him in the ring, but did plug his Big Ten and NCAA title wins, and he shot an angle with Chad Gable at Mania. The idea was for him to become a regular on Raw after this past semester ended at Minnesota, but he hasn't been used, and he's talked about returning to college to go for a third NCAA title in 2023, and even pondered if that was the case, going for a second gold medal in 2024. He would be strongly favored to win the NCAA title after he dominated all season and won the Hodge Trophy this year. An Olympic gold medal, while he would be a favorite, is a much higher level and certainly far from a sure thing. If he was to win 3 NCAAs and 2 golds, there would be no argument that he was the greatest American heavyweight wrestler of all time. Most now would say Bruce Baumgartner, who won 1 NCAA title in 1982 and golds in the 1984 and 1992 Olympics. On the Inside podcast, former WWE star Mr. Kennedy would note that he's been training with Gable. "I have a couple of students right now that have WWE tryouts. One guy that is signed to WWE. That's Gable Steveson, who's been training with us. He's local. He lives in the Twin Cities, and he's been signed now to Raw for a year, and they really haven't done much with him, so he just wanted to try it. He reached out and said, 'Hey, can I come in and just hit the ropes and stuff?' So we've been doing a couple times a week with him, and I've got some of my best students working with him." While it's been noted that Ronda Rousey pushed to lose her title to Liv Morgan, the Observer has noted how Sasha Banks and Naomi walking out on the company played a role in this as well. Part of the reason, if not the key reason for the recent push of Morgan, was the walking out of Banks and Naomi. When they left, the idea was that SmackDown needed a new top-tier woman babyface, and Morgan was the one who got the pick of the draw. It's also worked out because the fan base was ready for her. With Triple H back working for WWE in his position as Executive Vice President of Talent Relations, taking back this position from Bruce Prichard, who is going back to his previous role in creative. Of course, the Talent Relations department had been headed by John Laurinaitis, with him departing from the company after being named in the investigation into sexual misconduct allegations against Vince McMahon. Fightful is further reporting that Laurinaitis is effectively gone, with some of the company's top talent apparently calling him a snake, and Triple H is expected to adapt to the company's hiring practices with the Next in Line program. Laurinaitis' WWE phone number, which he's had for decades, has been disconnected. With her more than 260 days into her reign as NXT Women's Champion, Mandy Rose spoke on After the Bell about how well this year has been for her. "I'm super grateful for everything that has come my way this past year, but I have to say in the beginning, I was a little taken back, of course. I really didn't know what the reasoning was, why I was going to go back to NXT, but I knew in the back of my head, in the back of my mind, that this is going to be something really good. And anything I've done in my past before wrestling, I've always kind of had the drive and put in the hard work to create whatever I wanted to create, and it's a blank slate so I can create whatever I want. I've really been enjoying my time so much that I love it, and I don't see anyone taking this title away from me, to be honest. I'm extremely happy right now. 100%, I'm definitely enjoying my time in NXT. But at the end of the day, of course, I want to be back on Raw and SmackDown, and I think I will be. And I think people better show some respect and show what I've accomplished at this point, whether it's defending my NXT Women's title, or whether I'm back up there trying to get the Raw Women's Championship or the SmackDown Women's Championship." With Maxine Dupree stepping in for Max to manage the Maximum Males, Fightful has given an update in this segment being changed. Max Dupree was unbooked last minute, and people associated with the segment weren't given real concrete information on his status as of now. McMahon had taken particular interest in the Maximum Male model's angle, as it was all his idea. Mace and Mansoor were said to have been on board with the angle, but Eli Drake had some reservations about things. Ringside News would confirm that his time on SmackDown has come to an end. Max Dupree had a brief run on the WWE main roster, but that's over. We have confirmed that Max is out. Also, we were told that there is doubt that he was cut out for the main roster, and he lacked people skills. Take that as you will. With Vince McMahon retiring, it was said that many changes were seen from the most recent SmackDown. As Fightful said, there were plenty of people that we spoke to that believed that the impending leadership may not want to deviate from Vince McMahon's vision out of respect, but think there are small improvements to be made that can make a big difference. Speaking of McMahon stepping away from his duties, stars in the company were apparently shocked. One WWE talent said that it shouldn't have taken a scandal for a shakeup, and it made a lot of people wonder who was next to go, especially in Vince's inner circle. Another talent said, "I'm not banking on anything being permanent. Triple H was phased out, Stephanie was phased out, Bruce left the company for a decade, Johnny has been in and out, and none of them has the power Vince does. I'm not convinced that he can actually stay away, especially if he feels the heat has died down." On Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer spoke about WWE not wanting to make big changes so as to not scare investors. Don't expect any major changes, because right now they want to show Wall Street and the stockholders that everything is stable and fine. They don't want big changes. They want everything to be looking as stable as possible to make it look like it's a smooth transition and that the company is in good hands and doesn't fall apart without Vince McMahon. When it comes to changes for WWE, it seems Bruce Prichard is no longer only the temporary head of creative, with Ringside News reporting. We've had a lot of questions about who will be the final decider for WWE creative now that Vince McMahon is out. The answer might concern some, but others will be interested too. We have confirmed that Bruce Prichard is, in theory, by title, head of creative. At the post-show media scrum for the recent ROH event, Khan also explained his recent tweet, which seemed to take a shot at McMahon no longer being a CEO in pro wrestling. I was referencing that AEW Rampage was on, and just the fact that of the big major companies, who I would consider the big three, now I am the longest tenured CEO of course. I think if you consider pro wrestling, it's a fair statement. I just thought it's a factual statement. A note to promote Rampage, but that's all it was. I can't say anything else about it. Obviously, hopefully got some eyeballs on Rampage, and I really care about Rampage a lot. On a Friday, sometimes I will try to promote Rampage in fun ways. We had previously said that Vince McMahon announcing his retirement led to Brock Lesnar initially canceling plans to be on SmackDown last Friday. He would end up on the show to take out Theory. Explaining the deal made with Lesnar to ensure his return, Dave Meltzer pointed out that it was imperative that they got Lesnar back. The basic gist was, the most famous guy on the roster who was the main guy advertised for the show on Boston, all of a sudden, he walks out. That's the worst that could happen. They made sure he came back. I was not told what the deal was to get him back. The worst thing they could have is that Vince left and it's anarchy. Brock leaving and SummerSlam changing would have been an absolute disaster at this time, so they made sure that did not happen. And this was your pro wrestling news update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.